last mining sector speaker is a very important representative from, or a representative from a very important partner to the mining industry and the resource industry. And that's Cheryl Recollet, and she is with a First Nations band, and I will not pronounce it, I won't even try, because I won't get it right. But she is working with mining companies on the environmental, social impact, and employment side. As I said to you, mining employs more First Nations folks than any other sector in the country does. And also the other important thing to remember is that Canada has the second biggest piece of real estate in the world, 90% of which is Crown land, which means most of that is actually either owned by or under treaty with the First Nations. So they're very much partners in whatever development we do on the landmass we have. So Cheryl, please give us a chat about the First Nations role.
So, Ani, Cheryl Recollet, Indigenous Cause, Wahnapitae Donjiba. So I'm greeting you in my language of Anishinaabe. I said my name is Cheryl, and I come from Wahnapitae First Nation. That's part of our tradition. That's part of how we like to greet each other. And another part of our tradition is we like to, and I'm going to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit, which is something that, as people and we're entering into each other's territories, we like to acknowledge as well. So those are some of the traditions and some of the practices of our people. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is some of our traditions and some of our knowledge and how we're really trying to include that in resource development projects, how we're trying to be innovative and how we're trying to ensure that we're contributing, to the mine of the future. So here's a picture of me when I was small. And here is, right next to me is my cousin Tomalee. So part of our family tradition is that her and I, as far as I can remember, have always had to share our birthdays. So our birthdays are about 10 days apart, and I don't know if, according to this picture, it doesn't look like I'm too happy to be sharing a birthday with her. But needless to say, it always happened, right? So, and actually our birthdays are in May, and just a few weeks ago, we did the same thing. We had our parties together. So still, after all of this time, we're still trying to ensure that some of those traditions, flourish. And then I'll bring you to this photo. So these are the Anishinaabe Kwezans in our community, so our young women, our young girls, and we're really trying to ensure that these girls, these kids will be able to foster our own Indigenous knowledge and ensure that it goes into the future for all of our future generations. So we've started to recognize that, as technology has advanced, as we've been participating in society, that we don't have as much time to, live off the land like we used to, right? So, we shop at the grocery store, we're not, out hunting for everything anymore because we don't have, the time to do that perhaps, or there's a lot of, new innovations, right? So how do we ensure that our land-based knowledge, our Indigenous knowledge is being transferred on to our kids? So for my community of Wahnapitae First Nation, I'm the Director of Sustainable Development, and I think that it's really important that our youth still understand this knowledge and that they also understand science. So what we created was a program called our Sustainability Superheroes, in which, we're trying to ensure that our youth understand their sacred responsibilities for caring for the earth, but also perhaps maybe engaged in science and engaged in environment, so then that way they can take over the jobs that we're doing. They're gonna be our future leaders, so they need to have a strong understanding. So,
New initiative that we have here at Wahnapitae is our Sustainability Superheroes. What kind of superpower would you want if you could have any superpower?
Have the ability to clean the whole world in just a few minutes. To keep the land safe.
I would plant 1 million trees a day.
To save all the endangered animals.
And our teachings, this is one of the first medicines that we were given.
Maybe I shouldn't tie.
We've had quite a few youth participate in our community cleanup, and we also just recently had some do some tree planting. Why do you think it's important that we take care of our environment?
So we don't get like a bad land to live on, so we could have air, trees, and all the animals. So the animals could live. Wildlife is great.
So that's just a little snippet of some of the programming that we do, right? So it's, it's about sharing with them some of our teachings, sharing with them some of our ceremonies, but also sharing with them, we take out microscopes and we look for benthics to see if we can find out what are good indicator species of good water quality, right? Trying to engage them. You've seen they were at a workshop called Capture the Wind, in which we're trying to teach them about renewable energy. We do Capture the Sun. We're trying to develop and foster an understanding of resource development, so that way when these are decision makers of our community or when they're leaders, they'll have a strong foundation to understand these projects. And also so that our Indigenous knowledge lives on, right? That's kind of what I'm going to talk about next. So you guys all hear about, Indigenous knowledge. It's called several different things. You'll hear it Aboriginal traditional knowledge, TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, IK, Indigenous knowledge, but it's all comes down to the same thing, right? It's about understanding a unique relationship that we have with the land, and trying to use our knowledge to contribute to innovative solutions. So why do we care about Indigenous knowledge? Why do we have to, learn about this now, or why you're hearing more about this, in today's society, right? It's because a lot of, the previous speakers mentioned, any type of resource development that's happening in Canada, or perhaps even in North America, happens on Indigenous territory. So more and more Indigenous peoples are wanting to be included in this process, meaningfully included in this process, included in decision-making related to these projects. So how can that happen, right? And then there's also something to also point out, that Indigenous knowledge tends to be, people will be like, oh, well, how did you guys used to canoe over here? And how did you guys used to do this? It's like, it's not a used to thing, it's a now thing. We're still utilizing our land, we're still hunting, we're still trapping, we're still fishing, we still understand, weather patterns and these types of things. So lots of times it's talked about in a historic context, but no, now it's living and breathing. And to bring it back to mining, we're here on a mining panel. Why does mining development, care about traditional knowledge, right? So typically, just because of, a lot of the case law that has come out, and a lot of, with like Chilcolton, Caldwell, all these cases that are saying, Indigenous people need to be included because we need to ensure that we're not impacting their Aboriginal and treaty rights, which I love, I get. I'm happy that I still have Aboriginal and treaty rights and that we're all working towards protecting those. But what we're talking about is me moving beyond that checkbox approach in the EA that says, hey, Cheryl, am I impacting your Aboriginal and treaty rights? Oh, no, you're not. Okay, great. Here's my application for my EA, and hopefully the government will give me my permit. And I recognize that's a valuable part of it. But in terms of getting to innovation, we need to move beyond this checkbox approach and utilize our knowledge like we utilize science, right? To help inform project design. So, it's just not a matter of impact now, it's a matter of, no, we want to be included, we want to be engaged, and we want our local knowledge to be included, right? So what that may look like could mean different things. And there's, several examples across this country of how Indigenous people are including their knowledge into resource development or into monitoring programs or whatnot. Those I don't know too much about, but what I do know about is our story, and that's what I'm going to share with you a little bit today. So I had mentioned previously that I come from Wahnapitae First Nation, which is located about 60 kilometers north of the city of Sudbury, about 400 kilometers north of the city of Toronto, north of Cottage Country, for all of you guys that head up that way, a little bit further down the highway. And, I have 2 mines in my backyard, pretty much, right? And so the Whistle Mine story was an old historic open pit mine that operated in the 1900s, maybe about from 1900 to maybe 1920 or so. And then, back then there wasn't as much environmental regulations, probably none at that time, really. So when they were mining this, lots of my community has contaminated soil now, contaminated sediment from the processes that they used back in the day. So this actually started the beginning of our relationships with the mining sector. So 1996, the Whistle Mine needed to write its closure plan, and they were going through actual mine closure, and they were trying to figure out, what's an innovative solution to cap and close this mine. And what we said is we want to be included in this discussion. We want to have a say in how this mine is decommissioned. And this was prior to the modernization of the Mining Act, prior to all these consultation stuff that are coming out in which you have to be included. This was kind of way before that, so they didn't have to include us, but we really were strong and said, no, we want to be involved in this design. So, we signed our first MOU with INCO at the time, and the catalyst was this closure plan. So, lovely, this is our first mining agreement, finally starting to, get engaged with the industry, seeing how much benefits we can get out of this, seeing how we could work together to collaborate and manage. Then 1999 happens, and we have a tailings dam breach that breached all their tailings, flowed right through, right into Post Creek, which was already an area of concern for our community, and right through the community to our lake. So it impacted all of our drinking water sources. So, we had to be on bottled water now for 2 years, and, significantly compromised the trust in our relationship, right? So where do we go from here? What do we do? Perhaps we can, litigate, go to court, take the company to court. It's going to cost us a lot of money. We're a First Nation. We don't have any money. So, we're severely underfunded. So what we chose to do was chose to work within the confines of our relationship to really address the problem, right? What are we concerned about here? We need to see the extent of this contamination. We want to be involved in developing an environmental monitoring program that would be robust and resilient, and that would provide some confidence for our community members that this is being looked after in a genuine, meaningful way. So since then, this is a picture of my Uncle Norman here signing the first agreement when he was chief. He's now 90. So, but since then, we now are responsible. So we get mining environmental contracts now from our industry partners. So now we're responsible for the water sampling, mostly surface water on Post Creek specifically for this mine, as well as for other mines in our territory. So Whistle was our very first agreement, but now we also have formalized relationships with Glencore and with KGHM and with Wallbridge. And, we try to use these relationships to really collaboratively manage our resources. And these all have structured relationships in which we can have a forum to talk about things. Some are more resilient than others, some are more genuine than others, some are more, but it's a relationship, right? You got to work towards it to make sure that it's effective. So, what we didn't expect by participating in this process and ensuring that, our needs were being heard, we didn't expect to strengthen our relationship. It came from a really contentious place, right? We were very upset, we were fighting, but by utilizing the relationship and trying to strengthen it, trying to work together, we've, achieved that. We've developed strong environmental capacity now. We now operate an environmental company. It's called Tailings Technical and Environmental Services, named after the chief who signed our treaty in 1850, Chief Tailings. We have a sense of purpose for our relationship now. It's not just like a IBA type relationship. You're impacting me, now you have to pay me. It says a lot more about participation and active involvement. We now have a strong sense of belonging to our community because they recognize that we're taking the lead on managing our environment and working with our industry partners to do so. a sense of connectedness to our partners, right? These aren't only our partners now, they're our friends, they're our experts, they're our specialists that we can utilize to help inform some of our solutions, not only, our industry partner solutions, right? And what we also really like about this final part is we're developing environmental monitoring programs that include a lot of science, because we know we need the science, but we're also including ceremony, right? So we're also out there praying for the water, caring for the water, doing water walks, doing water journeys, right? Just to ensure doing water ceremonies, so that way the spiritual element of it is also taken care of. And it's a part of a holistic program. And even when we're working on Whistle Mind, like when it's being regreened, is there any way we can, plant some more cultural significant species perhaps, or those kind of things? How can we be innovative to turn this mine site into a land use that our people can still use, right? So how do we do that? And this is kind of all brings us back to when I first started. I shared you some photos of myself as a kid and our youth as children, and how we're trying to get them back out on the land. So what we really encourage now is land-based learning. So land-based learning, teaching them how to hunt, teaching them how to fish, teaching them to appreciate nature again. So here is a little snippet. So what we also feel is, our Indigenous knowledge plus science can really foster innovative solutions, right? We're all here together to collaboratively manage this. We're all neighbors, we can fight forever, but the problem won't go away. So how do we, foster innovative solutions? And I find contentiousness often does that, right? So if you develop a relationship that you can actually talk about things, you'll really find some innovative solutions. So, but the important part is we need to ensure that this local knowledge goes on to our future generations, right? So this is how we're
began doing
trying
these
to do
annual
that.
canoe trips in order to gather data. We saw this as an opportunity to bring the youth on the land and reconnect them with their Anishinaabe roots. In an exercise to assert our use and occupancy of our territories, and also to provide them a land-based learning experience.
You get to learn how to create your own fire. You get to learn what foods are able to eat. You get to learn how to set up your campsite, how to survive in the wilderness if it comes to that point in life. And I think it's a good experience.
They get to forget all the stress that they leave at work and at home. They get to experience our culture like no one else does.
I think it's important because it teaches how beautiful it is out here, and it's important for them to come out here and experience nature in firsthand and not on TV.
I know we could even be hunting out here. We could be going for partridge and fishing. We can just better our knowledge of our culture.
So not only are we reclaiming our sacred sites and documenting our native values, but we're also bringing our family and our communities together.
One way that we're trying to bring our youth out onto the land, and this was actually extremely valuable, not particularly for the mining industry, but for the forestry industry, which they log all up in our territory. And because our youth are traveling on that canoe, it's on the Wahnapitae River, so as they're canoeing there every year, they're recognizing that they need, vegetation on both sides, right? Those are their grocery stores. So they've been able to change the regulation for the forestry companies who used to, I think, cut up to maybe 30 meters on the edge of each river. Now they've got it to increase it to 100 or 200 meters, right? So by utilizing our land and voicing their opinion, sharing their knowledge, they were able to, impact the work that industry is doing and try to work towards finding a sustainable solution. So that was a little bit of our story and how we're integrating our knowledge, and I appreciate your time, and miigwech.